Good morning, folks. Friday, April 24th, and today what we're going to be going over is we're going to be going over the immune system. Now, the immune system was removed from the 2020 curriculum for AP Biology. You don't need to know it anymore. But since we're talking about how all these different systems work and how one thing from a separate unit can still connect, there we go. It's a really good illustration of it. So, that is going to be our goal. The other thing that you may notice that's currently sitting up here in Schoology is AP Biology Concept Checklist 2016. If you read the directions, you'll see about this. But this I got from another teacher in one of our Reddits. And basically, it's a checklist of the different conceptual things that you should be able to do. It is not completely accurate because obviously it is geared up to 2016, which means that it's got nervous system and immune system, which are not part of our current curriculum. It also has stuff on evolution and ecology, which will not be tested on this year. So, as you go through it, feel free to throw out some sections that just aren't going to fit. As a case in point here, if I bring this up and I start going through here, the very first one is evolution and genetic change. Now, some of the genetic change things, yeah, not terrible, but all the Hardy Weinberg stuff, they said that's not here. Don't worry about it. If you come down here to, oh, shush, dog. Don't know if you can hear her growling in the background. Right here, timing and coordination of biological processes. Almost all of these are immune system related. So, once again, we can ignore a lot of those. What I want you guys to do is over the course of the weekend, look through these. Mark down ones that you don't have an example for, that you don't have an explanation for. Can you define mutation and explain how it occurs? If you can do that, great, don't worry about it. But if you look at one of these and you're like, I have no idea about that, can you explain how genetic variation in prokaryotes occurs through horizontal transfer? I don't know. Mark it down. And then Monday, I want us to be able to come back so I can kind of get a tally of which parts do people need so we can focus our study as we are down into the last week and a half before the test. So that's one part. Go through the checklist, see what you can and what you can't do. Now, the main event for today are chemical defenses in the immune system. Now, once again, this is removed, so I just want you guys to use this as an illustrative example for how things work. And what we're going to be looking at here largely for us today is our non-specific response here. Because I want us to go over the plants, the vertebrates, and the invertebrates, their methodology for how they handle things. Then, when I see you on Monday, we'll go over the specific one for how humans handle things, just to kind of compare and contrast how these two different systems work. So it won't take too long for all of this, but let's roll on. All right, so, all sorts of pathogens can make us sick. We've talked about them. Sometimes you'll see things like this. This is a blight on some kind of plant leaf. All right, now, plants, vertebrates, and invertebrates don't have a specific immune system like we do. Their defenses are more general. They always do the same thing no matter what it is. We have the ability to learn from something and then be ready for it again, the nature of a vaccine. Plants and things like insects, crabs, spiders, stuff like that, they don't have that capability. We do have a non-specific response as well, but that's all they have. So when you take a look at this beetle, it doesn't matter what starts to infect it. It will always respond the exact same way. So let's talk about kind of how that works. When we're taking a look at insects, what we're really talking about are specialized cells that exist in their fluid. Now, their fluid is called hemolymph. They don't really have blood. If you've ever noticed, if you step on a bug, there's no blood. There's just stuff. Well, they have what's called an open circulatory system. They don't have blood vessels like we do. They, for most intents and purposes, they don't have a heart like you think of it. They just sort of have this fluid inside that sloshes around. They have a few little pumps to help keep it moving, but it's very, very general. Now, in that, they have these specialized cells, the hemocytes, blood cell. And basically, what they do is they carry around a battery of receptors. Those receptors will bind to bacteria, and then that will trigger it to form a vesicle around it. Lysozymes then will gather to that vesicle. They will release the enzymes into it. It'll break down that bacterium, and then the debris is just ejected out. Exocytosis, right? We've learned about most of these things now. Now, plants use something else that's really interesting. So, basically, what happens is as bacteria or something infect plants, they're going to cause some damage. That damage is going to produce these MAMPs, these microorganisms associated molecular proteins. Now, these are ligands. The ligands bind to a receptor. That receptor will then go through all of our internal signaling, the cascade, the amplification, and then that will activate parts of the DNA in order to do the next thing. So they use these PRRs, pattern recognition receptors. Which type of receptor are they? Is it G protein? Is it ligand gated ion channel? Or is it RTK? Your answer should have been RTK because you can see it's got two of them, the two dimers here. All right, so the cell signaling goes in. These MAMPs and PRRs are actually going to be very specific for what they respond to. But ultimately, what it's going to do is it's going to cause the plant to just automatically trigger its resistance. And that signal, you can see it here. The pathogen enters the leaf, binds the receptor of a cell, starts doing its bad stuff to that cell releases this signal. That signal will then immediately attempt to leave the leaf and spread out throughout the rest of the plant. Now, its goal is to destroy not just the infected cell, but also all the nearby cells. If you've ever looked at a plant, you notice that one leaf is turning yellow, or one leaf has those little dots on it, but none of the other ones do. Well, that's because this system worked. It basically shunted off that leaf, let that leaf die in order to save the rest of the plant from whatever that form of infection was. So this is large scale. This is what we would consider in a human being to be an endocrine level communication. It's going to get into the venous tissue of the plant. It's going to travel throughout the plant and try to trigger every cell to recognize this kill and close behind it. It's a very powerful method, but for instance, if this happened in human beings, you might get an infection from a cut and your arm would rot off. You'd be safe, but we would be losing significant function from utilizing a method like this. So, pretty straightforward. Non-specific response for plants is going to use these signal molecules, the MAMPs. They will bind to very particular pattern recognition receptors, PRRs, and that will then cause the resistance to kick in where it starts to close off to make sure that nothing leaves. In our invertebrates, like bugs, you're going to have those hemocytes, those blood cells, once again with matching receptors for different forms of bacterium in order to identify, absorb, and then let the lysozymes, one of our cellular organelles that carry enzymes, move in, dump the enzymes in order to break it down. Now, the vertebrates have both, and I said that before. The non-specific is going to be just stuff that we always do, regardless. The innate immunity um, is basically just going to stop the general bad stuff from happening. Now, we've got a couple different ways for it. Number one, we produce mucus. It may not be pleasant, but to bacteria, that's a very powerful capture method. It keeps them contained. It stops them from communicating between each other, things like quorum sensing. Inside, you've got all of these tiny little hair things along your respiratory system that help to move and push microbes up and out so that we cough and we get rid of it. Unfortunately, works against us with some things like, oh, I don't know, our current virus pandemic. And then we've got secretions. Now, interestingly, you may not think about it, but your skin is actually very acidic. So now all of those oils, all of those greases, all of that mucus that we produce that captures stuff, the small, very tiny amounts of sweat that we produce is acidic. They're trapped, and then they get broken down. Now all of this is just going to happen on its own. All right, once we get to about here, now we're going to start getting into the specific response, and that's going to be a video for Monday. I just kind of wanted to go over this as an example because I think it's useful in that way. Oh, I am resizing the wrong pictures. One moment. Soup. All right, so pretty straightforward. I want to give you guys some time to go through that checklist and to finish up any other work that you might not have done yet. If you never looked at the panda case study from a couple days ago, go back, take a look at that. Did If you didn't watch the AP Bio classroom yesterday, you might want to spend some time doing that. Otherwise, have a good weekend. Keep practicing. Keep preparing. As of right now, we are one, two. We're about 3 weeks away from the AP exam. So it's definitely time to start to focus in. I'll see everybody on Monday. Have an excellent weekend.